Whenever Hollywood tries to make a movie about the gospel, it always goes back to Augustine and Calvin. And that's the kind of God you have. It's like Kirk Cameron's behind every one of these things or something. And it's not good news. So which kind of films do we see the influence of the gospel in?
The Gospel in Movies, today on In the Shadow of the Cross. Welcome back, everybody, to In the Shadow of the Cross. I'm Loren Rosser, here again with my friends Jim Durkin.
Howdy.
And Michael Harden.
Greetings.
How are you guys doing? You staying warm?
Barely.
Barely. Yeah, we're actually going to be at a low of 10 degrees here in Texas in 2 days.
Goodness.
And last week, remember, I was telling you guys we were like high 70s, so
Yeah.
It's so weird here. But I thought it would be fun to talk about it. After we got off the podcast last week, the three of us just began chatting about movies and TV shows that we thought were quite profound from a theological perspective and the gospel perspective. And then that got highlighted this weekend when I was watching a program that Michaela pointed Lily and I to, and I just went, oh my gosh, this show is just hitting the first point of the gospel about for all have sinned, and in a profound way. So I thought this would be a fun thing to talk about today.
Oh, was this Jerry Falwell's biography?
I have on my list, when I put down the list of good shows, I do have one on there that comes close. But this was actually a show that is not a family show by any means. So if our listeners are planning to run out and watch it, be aware it's called The White Lotus. It is a hard rated R. So if you're, for our listeners, if you're planning to run out and watch it, don't get mad at me. Just be aware that it is not a family show. And when I say rated R, I mean, it's got everything in it that a rated R program would have. So just so be warned.
Well,
But
I wish I was 16 again.
exactly. But here's the thing that was so profound about it. It's a series on HBO. And they've just finished. I actually ended up binge watching the second season as well over the weekend, because the first season was so profound in that basically the White Lotus is a hotel chain. And so the first season focuses on their resort in Hawaii, and it's all the rich people coming to the resort in Hawaii. And when it begins, you think it's going to play on the typical storyline of, okay, here's the rich people and here's the poor workers that they're just abusing and treating so poorly and all that. But the thing that just blew my mind was that it showed that, just like I said, for all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. It showed that the rich, yes, they were manipulative, they were controlling, and they were dominating and in love with money and oblivious to people's needs around them. However, the hotel staff and stuff was also just as greedy. Even though they didn't have the money, they wanted the money. And so they would manipulate the rich people to get a hold of their money. And so I don't want to give things away for people who watch it, but it was interesting because some of the characters, like one who we would, in typical circles, you would say, oh, she's a victim. She was manipulating one of the rich people, attaching agenda to what looked like to be love because she was after her money to start her own business. So you had this paradigm where I was amazed at the writer, because the writer, he blew my mind, because he couldn't have had a dog in the fight in any arena. On the political left, on the political right, on the side of wealth, on the side of victim or oppressor. I mean, because the way he showed it, Michaela told me people would. A lot of people don't like the show. They get offended at the show, besides the, how harsh it can be and stuff. But when I watched it, I saw why, because it's just like we've been saying for the last couple of weeks, how the gospel is offensive. You're sitting there watching this program, and you have a family, this rich family, sitting down to have dinner. And you would hear the people on the political right say all the nasty things that, is stereotypical of the political right that, that we hear. And you're going, yeah, oh man, that's bad, or whatever, depending on where your politics is. But then somebody else on the political left jumps in and they say something and it's terrible. And you're going, yuck too. And then one of the things that was really profound is this mother and daughter are getting in this argument, and the mom's basically kind of on the right wing rich point of view, and the daughter's on the oppressor, victim point of view, and the mom gets really upset. And she goes, "You talk all the time about all these people that are hurting and wounded and need protection and loving all these people, but you don't even love your own family that's right here." And I was just like, bam, about fell out of my chair. I was like, oh man, this show is not playing the typical pick your political party and push your propaganda for your side. I mean, it was an equally pointed out the sin in all the camps. And then the thing that was amazing was there were a couple victims on the show. Well, everybody is a victim of the disease of sin, is what you see. Everybody you can stop and feel bad for, because the way they present it is, here's this person doing this thing, but they're complex. They also do some good things. Or like the mom, she's this terrible CEO woman, and yet she made that profound statement. And so you would see these things happen, but then the thing that was really interesting was the two people who you could truly say were victims in the show. And I don't want to give away who they were, but they were not who stereotypically are victims. And you find out they're victims as the show storyline progresses. You're like, wow, out of all these people, the two people who don't fit our stereotypical views in society of who the victims are, in this scenario, they're the victims here. And so it really took everything down to a genuine interpersonal relational level of get out of your political frameworks, get out of all this nonsense, and look at the people right in front of you. And so it was really good. And then season 2, Michael, you'd like this. Season 2, the whole theme of it was mimetic desire. Mm-hmm. And not just because, that's what all movies do and all novels do. They're actually sitting at a dinner conversation, and one of the people brings up mimetic desire in the conversation. So the writer is telling you, this is exactly what I'm doing. And the whole show is every single relationship or group, because there's different groups at this resort. And the second season's in Italy, in Sicily, at a resort. Every group, it's two people after something. In every scenario, but they play it out so well, so it's complex. So it's not just immediate, this person wants out, this person. But you begin to see how the conflict that's arising between all the different groups because they're after the same thing, and how, just like we talked about, how when we look at Jesus on the cross and how that mimetic desire is what brings about violence and all of that, and that's what it does. In the scenarios, it escalates to the place of violence and just strife and all kinds of just nasty stuff, because it's in each group there are 2, 3, or whatever people after the same thing, and one group in particular, they're actually totally obviously imitating each other's desire. I mean, they make it plain that this person is imitating that person. So it's really good. So I just had to put that one out there for the people who want to can tolerate some serious rated R material, but want to see some definitely good entertainment stuff that gets to the core. And like I said, it shows how the gospel offends. If you've got a dog in the fight, especially in episode 1, you'll realize it, because you'll hear some political thing and you'll be like, oh, ow. So there's my show to start out with.
So Hollywood has basically been stuck telling the same story that Shakespeare told, that the gospel and scripture tells, that the ancient mythologies tell. The story is a superhero story. and good and evil are clearly defined. We go back to the spaghetti westerns and, of course, into Star Wars and The Matrix, okay? And especially in horror films. Horror films are, I think, the best genre to really understand this. So, for example, in the horror genre, you have zombies. Now, zombies are a new phenomenon. They didn't come about until George Romero in the 60s,
Right.
and of course, there's all kinds of great films about zombies. The most redemptive film about zombies, oh, what was the name of it? It was the zombie guy that falls in love with John Malkovich's daughter.
Yes, it's on my shelf here.
Yeah, I can't think
Warm
of it.
Bodies.
Warm Bodies. There is a gospel film. And of course, you have
Yes.
that whole baptismal scene where he's spread out like a cross at the end as he falls. I mean, it's wonderful stuff, right? The
Yeah.
rebirth and the blood and the water. I mean, it's very Johanna in there at the end. But there is a movie that deconstructs horror films. And it does it. And I think that, like you had said, there are writers in Hollywood that know the mimetic theory, you know. And in The Last Cabin in the Woods,
Yeah.
that's an intentional deconstruction of the entire horror genre using mimetic theory because you have the 5 different types of sacrifices.
Yes.
And then you have the quote government behind the scenes trying to keep the mechanisms got to be in control and then of course when it doesn't, what happens? Boom, all the ancient gods come back. They're angry and pissed, right?
Yes.
Brilliant deconstruction of this mythology from John Wayne to Rambo and beyond.
Yes.
I think the challenge is how and where do we see the gospel portrayed in films without religious language? And this is really important.
Right.
Because whenever Hollywood tries to make a movie about the gospel, it always goes back to Augustine and Calvin. And that's the kind of God you have.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like Kirk Cameron's behind every one of these things or something.
Yeah.
And it's not good news. So which kind of films do we see the influence of the gospel in? That's key for me. So I have 2 movies and 1 TV show, but Jim.
No, I'm going to let you jump in first.
By the way, I have to say, if Jim, have you seen Cabin in the Woods?
Not yet. No.
If you haven't, I highly recommend it. It's
right.
When he just broke down, no spoilers, but I was laughing when he was saying because
Sure.
that ending, I was laughing at one of the particular monsters that did something.
Yes,
So
yes. I mean, it's excellent. If I were to go, okay, so the movie that I think captures the kind of the rationale behind discipleship and then the threat that disciples and a master can make to an institution. And that's Dead Poet Society with Robin Williams.
oh yeah, that's a great movie.
Excellent, excellent film. And again, at the end, there is resurrection power when those boys start standing up on their desks
On
and
their
saying,
desks, yeah.
Walt Whitman, oh, Captain, my Captain, Very good. The second one is a not well-known film at all. It's called The Insatiable Moon. You can Google it. It's a New Zealand film. When Lori and I were there in 2012, we got to meet the director and the screenwriter, and the novelist is the screenwriter, and he's married to the director, who's a civil judge by day, tries criminal cases, but when he wanted to make a movie, anyway, it's The Insatiable Moon. It's quite beautiful if you ever get to see it, and because it's about mental illness, and it's about the church. Beautiful film, The Insatiable Moon. But now it lasts for me. So I just binged 6 seasons over the last 2 weeks of a TV show. The first 3 seasons were on Fox, and they were pretty straightforward. And then Netflix picked up the second 3 seasons, and they really got good. What do you get when you take Second Temple Jewish angelology, that is the Book of Enoch, the Book of the Watchers, chapters 1 through 36 of First Enoch, which describes the fall, the rebellion in heaven, and the angels and all their names and the lieutenants. What happens when you take that, bring that into the modern world where Lucifer has become human? And he's a very wealthy playboy, but he doesn't lie. He can't lie. He won't lie.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And he is a consultant for a detective played by Loren in the LAPD. So that's the thing. They're solving cases, right? But then there's this overarching story. Take this Second Temple angelology narrative, marry it with Enlightenment questions about good and evil, the nature of suffering. Is there a God? Where is God? What kind of God is God? And on top of that, if you're going to make a milkshake in a blender, throw in a little bit of Origen's doctrine of salvation, which includes the redemption of the devil.
Oh, wow.
And Tom Ellis plays I just fell in love with Tom Ellis as the character of Lucifer Morningstar. He's brilliant. And he only gets better season by season. He's just brilliant. I mean, so anyway, there's my three.
I'm so gonna watch that, and just so everyone knows, to clarify that you heard him mention the name. It's Lucifer.
Lucifer on Netflix, 6 seasons.
Very good.
Oh, you'll binge it.
Yeah, I'm off the next 2 weeks, so I've got something to watch.
I think my all-time favorite is probably the first one I ever saw that all the way through it I saw the gospel, I saw mysteries revealed, if you will. And this goes back a long way, back when I was a young man. The Matrix, you mentioned it, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, some of the things, not the obvious, not Neo being called the One or things like that. I mean, okay, that's kind of obvious, but things like the whole concept of the Matrix and realizing that works in a couple of ways. One, it works in the area of, being duped into, just what you see is what you get in the world. But it also works in the same way in religion, you think you're taking the pill that set you free, and really all you did was take, you still took the blue pill, you just got into a different matrix, whatever, and it's just the unveiling of, and I agree with you, it's good versus evil and things of that nature, I get that, but it's just the little nuances that work all the way through the movie that if a person's willing to look at it, it's like, maybe I have kind of been blinded to what there is out there, and I like the concept of the rabbit hole, how deep does the rabbit hole go,
right?
Once you get into it, and the other one is also an old movie, and that's the Christmas movie. It's a Wonderful Life.
Lily and I were just talking about that. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that.
Well, I think the first time, that it dawned on me that this wasn't just a stupid black and white movie that my dad likes to watch every year, was when he was on the bridge. Mm-hmm. And he all of a sudden becomes aware of what the world would be like without him. Mm-hmm. And, you're talking about binge watching. I work nights, so I get an opportunity to do whatever I want, And every once in a while I'll get into a series. I haven't really been happy with any that I've watched lately, but I just went through all of The Flash.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
And, there were things in there kind of similar in a way to It's a Wonderful Life. Uh, the Flash goes back in time and he changes one detail, and it changes everybody's life in his life, you know. And I was just like, sometimes we don't like the things that have on in our life, but I become aware when I watch movies like that. I become aware of the fact that we really wouldn't like things going on if we had the power to change it, or if we weren't there in the first place, if we just weren't in the equation, And it's like the person we married, the kids we had, the job career we chose, all of that kind of stuff. And I'm not exactly a fatalist by any means, but I just realizing that, I don't think I would like to know what the world would be like if I wasn't in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the thing that Lily and I were talking about was how the thing about It's a Wonderful Life that stands out to me is that it's one of the few movies, it doesn't have a vengeful ending. He gets screwed over by whatever that old guy's name is,
Potter.
The main character.
Potter.
Yeah, Old Man Potter. And they never end it with the typical take that.
Right.
Something bad happens to him, some terrible. It just ends with the community comes together around the main character. Is it George? I think.
Yes.
George. Yeah.
The main character comes around George and helps him out of his pit, and that's it. That's the happy ending. It's not. Let's go. Hollywood now, in most cases, would go show something bad happening to Old Man Potter,
Mm-hmm.
and I like that they don't even go there. And to me, that was some realism, actually, of how happy endings should be. There's not vengeance involved. There's not not an act of revenge in there. It's funny, there was, if you guys remember that show back in the 90s, it was Married with Children.
Oh, sure.
They did a spoof on It's a Wonderful Life where they showed Ted, what's his name? Was it Ted Bundy?
Ted Bundy, yeah.
Yeah. I might be confusing him with a serial killer. Al Bundy. It was Al Bundy, not Ted Bundy.
No, it was Ted Bundy.
they show Al Bundy, his life, if his family's lives, if he's not there, and they're all happy and rich and everything's going great, and so the angel's like, oh no, this is not good, but then Al Bundy goes, you got to send me back. Look how happy they are. I can't let them be that happy. So it's pretty funny. One for me that, and it's one that you mentioned, Michael, actually, but it's not for the same reasons that most people like it, because it does, if you take it on the surface level, it is good versus evil, and that's the original Star Wars trilogy. Mm-hmm. The original Star Wars trilogy is totally at that, if you just take it at face value, it's the good versus evil thing, Superman kind of thing. But here's the thing I like about it. Now, Christians would say, I remember back in the day, they would go, well, see, Darth Vader gets redeemed at the end, and so it's kind of like the gospel. But I go further than that, because here's the thing that I caught after learning from you, Michael, about preaching peace and the gospel being peace and putting away all violence. And I came to appreciate Star Wars at a whole nother level that most people don't grasp at all. And why I would throw out all the sequels, because they undo the beauty of what was done in the original trilogy. And what's happening in the original trilogy, you've got the Jedi and you've got the Sith, and the Sith are power hungry and the evil force, and you've got the Jedi. They're supposed to be the voice of peace and good, and they're never supposed to use the Force for attack and all this stuff. But here's the thing: they're using the same weapons as the Sith. They're using their lightsabers. They're training in the same techniques and using the same weapons, the lightsabers, as the Sith do. So they're fighting power with power. So they're trying to use the very thing the Sith use to take over the universe to conquer the Sith. And they're getting nowhere. It's just a little bit, one group's up and a little bit, one's grouped down. And finally, when we come to the Star Wars trilogy, you just have Obi-Wan who's left as the Jedi and Yoda, and then they start training Luke. And they're training Luke in all the same techniques that they've used all the time. Ben dies. He goes to Yoda. He's being trained in the tech, all that stuff. Yoda dies. Now Luke is the last Jedi. He's facing off with, in the final movie, he faces off with Darth Vader and the Emperor. And he's using his lightsaber and he starts whipping Vader's butt. And long story short, he gets to the point where he almost defeats Vader, realizes, what am I doing? And then he stands before the Emperor and he throws his lightsaber away. And he goes, "You're wrong, Your Highness. I am a Jedi, like my father before me." And the Emperor is stunned because he threw his lightsaber away. He's now powerless. He's defenseless. And in that moment, Luke grasped something that none of the other Jedi did. We're supposed to be the peacemakers. We're supposed to be the guardians of peace. And you all been trying to fight this guy with power. And he gives up all his power. So the Emperor starts doing his zapping thing on Luke, and Luke's, basically doomed and dying. And as he's crying out, his father, Vader, sees him dying, and evil turns upon itself. Vader turns upon the Emperor and throws him down the shaft, and Vader ceases to be Vader, and evil is destroyed. The evil is destroyed because Luke threw away violence. And turned, basically, as we talked about, love is not violent. He turned to genuine love. Said, in Christianity, what we do is we say, violence is a typical Christianity, evangelical Western Christianity, violence is a last resort. So, they go along with Obi-Wan and Yoda, and, it's like, so they're genuinely good, but we save that lightsaber for when we need it. Luke is the only one who, when he's facing evil, he throws it away. He knows he's probably going to die, but he's so committed to the path that the Jedi have lost that he's going to embrace it completely. And that's what causes evil to implode. And I think of when we talk about Jesus on the cross, how he exposes the principalities and powers and strips them naked. And that's what you see happen there is this whole, the enemy, they don't know what to do. It's like, God's supposed to be violent. God's supposed to be vengeful, and he's not. And so the whole thing implodes on itself.
Same thing at the end of The Matrix, Volume 3, where Neo lays down in the shape of a cross.
Right.
Oh, right.
Sacrifices.
Now, and what you're saying, that's, get off movies for just a second, that's the power of the cross. That's the power that there is in Christ's body. He says the whole world will know you're my disciples because of the love you have for each other. And the mystery of it is that it isn't always immediate.
Right.
You manifest love and immediately your enemy, he sets before me, a table in the presence of my enemies, and immediately the church continued to grow for 300 years before Rome started backing off and saying, "Wait, maybe we ought to embrace this thing here," And I think all the disciples except John were killed. Jesus said, "Look, you're going to have some trouble in this world, but just keep loving. Just keep being nonviolent. Keep being a pacifist and love. And ultimately, we're going to win this thing. But in the meantime, some of you are going to die, And that's not a message that we, when you were talking there, Loren, I was reminded there is a line in The Matrix that I really, I've always enjoyed it, because to me it speaks a lot of what we're doing on this podcast. It speaks a lot of what my life's been about for years. And it's when Morpheus says to Neo, "I've led you to the door. That's all I can do. You have to walk through it."
Right.
And I think the thing is that when I listen to anybody, and people that know me know that I do enjoy reading books. I read all kinds of books on all kinds of subjects. If I hear about a new one, then I'm going to probably pick it up and read it, and I'm going to choose not to judge it too quickly. It's like, weigh it out. Is something being said here? And every time we hear something new, something that isn't the same old hash that we've been eating for 30 years, at our local, meeting house, we have an opportunity because we've just been brought to a door. We have to choose whether we're going to walk through that door or not. And unfortunately, far too many, believers say, that's not a door I've ever seen before, so I'm not walking through that one. I don't know what's on the other side.
Right.
And, so hopefully what we're doing here is bringing people to a door that they can choose, and hopefully a lot of people will choose to walk through it. So anyhow, that's my take on the Matrix and whatever. So,
Well, let me come back to another set of movies that I'm just, my brain is going, Loren. And there are 3 movies directed by Mel Gibson. The order that they were published in was The Passion of the Christ, Apocalypto, and oh, come on, Michael, Ridge, Heartbreak, or something Ridge, Heartbreak.
Oh,
Ridge.
yeah, Heartbreak Ridge. I almost wrote that down earlier. Yeah.
The thing is that they if you put Apocalypto first, Apocalypto's mythology, sacrifice, temples, ancient gods, right?
Yeah.
The Passion of the Christ unmasks all that. You have all the same phenomenon, the mimetic crowds, the priests, the sacrifice of the cross. Brilliantly done. And then Heartbreak Ridge is the impact.
Hacksaw Ridge. It's Hacksaw Ridge.
Hacksaw Ridge.
Yeah.
No, that was that Clint Eastwood movie back.
Yeah, that's why I had to look it, because I realized that. Yeah.
Oh, was it called Hacksaw Ridge?
Yeah, it's Hacksaw Ridge.
Okay. But the kid who's a Quaker is committed to pacifism. And yet he becomes the hero of the story. More so than the soldiers and their bravery. In other words, I think what Gibson did through that sequence of 3 films was to show the mythology, deconstruct it, and then say, this is what the world could look like.
Wow. Yes. And I've seen all 3 of those movies, and I love that you tied them together. That there's like a thread that actually goes through them, and that's awesome. Wow.
And the beautiful thing about the Gibson Passion of the Christ film, he avoided any Superman God concept. And in fact, what's brilliant about that is, just as God, when you read the Passion narrative, there is no God. There are people that believe in God, but there is no God doing any God stuff, right? And Gibson does the same thing in the film, except for the only notion that there's a God is where you see the way up in the sky, the camera is panning down on the cross, and then it drops like a raindrop down, or a teardrop, right? That's the only notion you get of an above-below kind of thing. Gibson did a wonderful job with those films.
Yeah, he did, and I love that they actually spoke. Was it Greek in
Aramaic.
In the Aramaic? Yeah, I love that they actually did that. That was one of the things I loved about it. And but it's interesting. You made me actually appreciate Apocalypto now more than I used to, because when I saw it just as a standalone movie, you just go, man. It's kind of like the White Lotus. Yeah, it's like the White Lotus. You basically go, man, people suck. They're violent. It's a movie so dark. And
there's no difference between Apocalypto and The Wolf of Wall Street. I'll tell you what.
You're right, though, and that's the thing. Wolf of Wall Street. That's funny you brought that up, because I didn't think of that one. But you're right. That's another one of those movies where you're watching, you're going, man, this movie is harsh. But then at the end, you're like, that is what a life is like if you completely self-indulge on every level. There's actually a parable there, Because, you're just like, man, look where it takes you, But yeah, Apocalypto's like just unhinged violence. Just sacrificial violence to the max. And then that violence meets higher violence that arrives at its shores, you know?
Yeah, exactly, right?
So you're just like, oh my gosh, it's just oppression meets oppressor, you know, on and
Meet
on.
the new boss, same as the old boss.
Exactly. But I love that you tied it together, because then you go to Hacksaw Ridge where it's that violence. I'm getting goosebumps. It's that violence continuing, but now you bring peace into it. And now you've got somebody who's actually accepted the message of the cross, who is a peacemaker, who's involved, is existing in the midst of that violence and bringing peace.
I think that the God of religion, Christian, Jewish, Islamic, mythic, whatever, the Janus-based God, the angry God in the end, the judge, right? What's really fascinating in as you go through the 90s and 2000s, there seems to be a growing awareness that there is something about the beyond that is terrifying. And that's thus zombies. Zombies bring the vengeance of the future into the present. That's what zombies are doing. They're, you know, because they're post-dead, and they come back and they come. Now here's the nice thing: if there ever truly is a zombie apocalypse, Christians don't have to worry, because zombies are looking for brains.
Oh man. and you just got us all canceled.
I can't believe you said that. Anyhow, Hacksaw Ridge, the character the movie was built around, Desmond Doss, I believe, was an actual character, war hero.
Yeah.
He was a Medal of Honor winner, and he took an incredible amount of flack for making his stand, for joining the army as a pacifist.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Why won't you carry a rifle?
Right.
We're going into war.
Right.
You know, all of this kind of stuff. And he ends up coming out, and it's not the movie, it's his real life. The movie was made on his life. But he ends up saving, I don't remember what it was, 70, 80 people, something like that.
Yeah. It was an amazing night.
Under incredible fire cover from the enemy, and he's rescuing people's lives when nobody else wants to step out there and do that. The you know, the macho guys and the it's like, hey, I'm ducking and covering here, you know, and he's like, no, I'm saving lives here, you know.
And he also carried away some Japanese soldiers as well.
Yes, he did. Yeah.
And what's amazing is I read an article on that movie, Jim, because you're talking about the guy's real life, and Mel Gibson said he left things out of it that were from the real life story because they were just too hard for people to believe if they saw it in the movies. It was that incredible that people wouldn't have even bought it.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
That is cool. Yeah. Yeah. I think anytime a person chooses to, in today's world, to be a true pacifist, he's going to take flack from people.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, especially if you live in Texas.
Yes.
California might be a little different.
In Lancaster County here, of course, we have it easy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. There you're not a problem.
It's just that everybody's passive aggressive here.
With their buggy races.
Well, yeah, right. Yeah, I've been here in Lancaster now 17 years, and it really is funny. I mean, I worshipped and taught in Mennonite church from 2005 to 2013, and I've known a lot of different types of Mennonites and Amish and stuff, and they're pacifists, but they are passive aggressive. They really are.
Wow.
They have not learned to tame that aggression. They've just simply learned to shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yep, that's that thing I was talking about a couple weeks ago as a teacher, having to learn to shut that part down, the passive aggressive part down, because that's easy to hang on to. You can get that jab in there still.
That's right.
If people are looking for a family movie, Jim, when you were talking about the church being stuck into a mindset for 30 years and not willing to walk through the door, a movie that immediately came to my mind was that one about the penguins, Happy Feet. Have you guys seen that one?
No.
It's actually my daughter makes fun of me because I love that movie, and it's like such a I think it's well made, but it's basically the penguin, they all sing, and it's really well done. The music is very good on the movie, the production value is very high, and it's so funny because it's made by the same guy who made all the Mad Max movies. And talk about extremes, he goes from Mad Max, Road Warrior, and all that, and then to Happy Feet. And when I found out he was the same director, I laughed so hard because it was so opposite extremes. But anyway, basically the penguins, they all sing, and and so they all would sing together, and they have the elders of the penguin, of the emperor penguins, and they all commune together, and this is how they've always done it, and they sing so they can get the fish, but the fish numbers have been lowering, and a big reason they've been lowering is because of the overfishing in the oceans, and from people, and his parents are basically like of Happy Feet, the main character who's born. They're the two of the great singers in the penguin colony, and their son is born, who's voiced by Elijah Wood, and he can't sing at all. They have him say this just squawks, but he keeps trying to do this little tap dance, and they're like, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with your, what's wrong? A dad imitates Elvis, and the mother is basically in Marilyn Monroe style. It's really funny. And the dad's like, what are you doing there with your feet, son? You need to sing, not dance, whatever. And but the whole thing is that this penguin, he can't sing, but he dances. And everyone thinks he's weird. He ends up getting kind of scapegoated and outcast and all this stuff. Long story short, he ends up in a zoo and tap dances in the zoo and gets the attention of all the people in the zoo. So they're like, what's going on with this? So they go take him back to his colony and watch the colony. And long story short, they end up realizing that if they dance, they get the people's attention so they can stop the overfishing. And so all the colony changes and realizes we need to change our message from singing. We need to start dancing. And so they start dancing, and then it changes the whole, brings about the happy ending and stuff. But the whole thing of you have the elders who are upset with this young penguin. He's upsetting the order. He's upsetting the way, not realizing that he's a gift to them to save them. So I thought that was I think that's a good family movie as far as kind of getting locked into tradition and missing what's important.
Wow. Singing penguins. In my day, all we had were singing nuns.
Exactly.
Flying nuns, or whatever they were.
The flying nun.
Yes.
That goes back a long way, Michael.
I know, Jim. I know.
Sally Field.
Yes. I remember even as a kid, because Flying Nun was before my time, and I remember the rerun came on, and my friend and I were at his house as his dad was watching the rerun, and we were like, are you kidding me? We're like, you think my generation's weird? Like, what's wrong with yours? You got flying nuns.
It's so weird to see reruns or whatever of shows that I was locked into as a kid.
Oh.
And now look at it and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe and I remember on Facebook here recently, somebody put something, what movie or TV show or whatever created in you the most fear you ever experienced, Yeah. And I thought, okay, well, there's a few. There's, The Twilight Zone, a couple episodes on that. But the first one was Laurel and Hardy meets Frankenstein. And oh my gosh, it scared me so bad. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Laurel and Hardy, a fear movie. It's like, yeah, but it's perspective. But what you're talking about, Happy Feet, I like your analogy. I think it's great. we can get so stuck in this is the way we do it. It's the, cutting the end of the ham, and why do you do it that way? It's like, well, my mom did it that way. You ask the mom, why do you do it that way? Well, my mom did it that way. You ask the grandma, and she says, because I had a small oven, And it's like, we get so stuck in, okay, we're penguins, we sing. And it's like, no, we follow what's built within us, and especially when the times and the seasons change and singing is no longer accomplishing the end goal, then it's like, okay, well, I remember my dad used to always say that principles that are based on the Word of God never change. Methodology always changes. And I think I think we have to remember that there are principles according to the Word of God that are living principles. But there's methodology that many times we as Christians, we put those right up there equal with those principles. And we'll never change the way we do things around here. And it's like, but it's not working.
Right.
It's like, yeah, it's not working.
But it's funny, Jim, because you were talking about Frankenstein being the movie that scared you. That makes me feel better, because the movie that terrified me the most in my childhood was Raiders of the Lost Ark. That scene at the end when they open the Ark and the angels of death fly out, and I love that movie, but I kid you not, I could not sleep at all that night. I snuck into my parents' office and grabbed the little black and white TV we had in there and put it in my bedroom just to turn it on to have something in there. And I was terrified I was terrified to go in the hallway, because I'm like, one of them angels of death is going to fly around the corner and look at me in the face, and I'm going to melt.
Your face is going to melt off.
Melt like a popsicle on a hot summer's day.
Exactly. So that actually makes me feel better, Jim, now that because I told my students that about the first movie that scared me, because they were talking about that and they laughed at me, and now I can say, hey, but my friend was scared of a Laurel and Hardy movie.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
When I was 17, my folks left the suburbs, beautiful suburbs, moved us out to the middle of nowhere, California, town of about 600. My stepfather wanted to farm, so he got himself a little almond ranch, and I didn't have any friends, I'm new there, and it's the high school, and it has 40 in their graduating class. I mean, it's a little teeny town, right? But my next door neighbor, he was a cowboy. And of course, in those days, cowboys and hippies were two sides of the spectrum in high school.
Right.
Rednecks and long hairs. But we became friends, Glenn and I did. And one night we decided, he had some buddies over, and we're just drinking beer like we always did. And we went to the movies. And we got back from the movies. And of course, Glenn's mother was going. 4 of us climbed into that queen-sized bed with the light on and slept together. What movie did we go see?
Let's see. So what year was this?
This would have been exactly summer of 74.
74. Now, was that The Exorcist?
Yes.
Yes, because that still to this day ranks as one of the scariest movies ever made.
If I see an advertisement for it, I turn the page.
Right.
If I hear the music for it, radio's off. It's like, get thee behind me, I ain't going back to that.
That is so funny. It's so weird how everyone is...
I'm gonna freak out.
But how everyone's wired different for what they're afraid of. Because I remember laying on my mom's bed, and she had a TV in her room, and we were watching The Exorcist was on TV, and I found it kind of scary, but it didn't bother me that much. Not like that Raiders of the Lost Ark movie did. In the Raiders of the Lost Ark one, this wasn't that long after seeing it. It's just weird the thing that how different things trigger different people, as far as fear goes. So
yeah, well, yeah, it is. You talk about the Exorcist. Totally off subject, but fun anyhow. I had a person call me up several years ago, probably in the early 80s, and said, I know who the Antichrist is. I said, okay, here we go. Who's the Antichrist? Reagan. Reagan? How do you come up with that? That movie, The Exorcist, it revealed the Antichrist. The Antichrist's name is Reagan. That was the name of the girl.
No way.
That was the name of the girl in the
That
movie.
right, exactly.
Wow.
So that's the kind of the antithesis of what we're doing here. We're talking about movies that kind of reveal more of a gospel message, and they use the movie to reveal who the Antichrist is. So go figure.
Exactly.
I think it's time for your meds. Film and culture, art, I mean, they've always, there's always been a real strict correlation between the symbolism and what's going on in the culture. And
Yes. Yes.
we've had apocalyptic movie after apocalyptic movie now for the last 20 years.
You're right.
Earthquakes,
Wow.
meteors, tsunamis, aliens. The world's going to be destroyed. And why? Well, because we are what Howe and Strauss call that fourth turning. We're at the end of any number of historical cycles in this one decade. I mean, there's many, many reasons, phenomenologically and historically, but it's as though the art world is getting us prepared for what's about to come. 2023 is going to be a very tough year.
Yeah.
And 2024 to 2026 are going to be downright brutal on this planet. Stuff that we haven't seen in our lifetimes.
Yeah. And I don't think you have to be a prophet to get that.
I'm no prophet.
I just, read the signs of the times. We're moving into something that is going to radically change the world as we know it today.
Yep.
And I think I think it behooves those of us who do see those things to not necessarily speak out against that, but to prepare people in another way. I listened to the words of Jesus to his disciples. He knew what was coming down. He knew the end of the age was about on them. And he prepared them in another whole way. And that's in the kingdom way. It's lose yourself or find yourself, however you want to say that, in the kingdom. And separate or divorce yourself from this world, because in just a few years, you're not going to recognize this world. It's going to be so radically different. And I think that's really our message. And I appreciate what you're saying. The arts and entertainment, they're getting a hold of this thing, and they're warning us in all kinds of ways. But because they don't clean up their language, or because there's a couple of sex scenes they throw into it or whatever, Christians don't want to watch those kind of movies, and instead want to bury their head in the sand and say, well, nobody told me this was going to happen.
Christians are just fetishistic.
Well, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, you definitely see that that's headed that way, and that's why for me, it's so important to really get down the thing of embracing peace, and the whole thing of choosing the pathway of discipleship, of genuinely nonviolence and loving my neighbor, not just in a theoretical way, because I think with the way things are going, tempers are going to flare very easily, and I'm having to learn now, because this is the time to train. Not, as Jim, you're a Marine, that you were in the past. You train before you go into combat. You don't train during
Yes.
combat.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and this is the time to train, to learn to walk in peace, to learn to love my neighbor.
That's right.
Now, because when it hits the fan, it's too late. It's too late to figure it out.
That's right. Yeah, that's the book I'm writing now. Is on the subtitle is Christian Discipleship in an Age of Crisis.
That sounds great. Yeah.
I'll give
Yeah,
you guys a
I'm-
manuscript. You can critique it before we send it off.
I'm researching right now in research mode, which includes reading a couple of your books, Michael, and that's part of my research, and many others also. But I've outlined and started into a book that will be titled "The Gospel According to Love."
Very nice.
And yeah, I think we have to warn people. And I know that's another subject. That's another podcast, the gospel of peace. But the whole proclamation that this time of year celebrates is peace has come to the earth.
Yeah. Well, in that spirit, we should. Well, this is going to get published after Christmas, so hey, Happy
Yeah.
New Year.
Right.
Wow. Well, guys, we're actually already out of time.
We're out of time.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
for whatever it's worth, Happy New Year to everybody.
Yes. And when
We'll
this
just skip
when this-
Merry Christmas.
Right, because when this plays, you're already in the new year. So think back a couple weeks or whatever, and I hope you had a happy new year. It was great talking to you guys again as usual, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Everybody out there listening enjoyed the conversation, and we will catch you again next week.